All right, Linux laptop, please play nicely.
You still, I've been a bit outside of the Linux scene. You still have problems with multiple monitors?
No,
Well, I'm
doing
not
it
trying
now.
to. Sorry, I'm not trying to.
I'm doing
judge
it
you.
now. It's the first
But-
time I've done it in a long
Gotcha.
time.
Yeah,
Puppy!
that was always the thing for me. Chef is deaf, actually. Chef the deaf dog.
That's why you didn't respond to the whistle earlier.
Deaf chef.
All right. Is everyone? Oh wait, no, we got folks over there. All right, we'll wait. We'll wait a bit. We'll be starting in 30-ish seconds, give or take. We are also live streaming this one because it's a talk on remote. So if you've got friends that weren't able to make it, do send them a link. We've tweeted it out, put it on the Slack.
Yeah. Try the live stream for the first time. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Just kind of feeling it out.
It seemed like a pretty cool talk to give about remote, and then have it be remote, so remote friendly. And I'm over there on that computer now. You didn't mute.
I did not mute.
Yeah, all right. Welcome to September 19th meetup of the Atlanta Android Club. Thanks for coming out. This time it's me that's giving the talk, but we do have some words before that. Off the top, this weekend is GDG DevFest, which I was just immediately reminded of. So do come out. It's going to be great. It's over at...
it's over at General Assembly at Pont City Market.
Perfect. It's going to be a great little venue. Pont City's awesome. I think it's most of the day, right? So
Yeah, it's from 10 a.m. till I think 4 or 5 p.m. We do have some great things we're raffling off as well. We've got amazing swag bags too, so it's going to be an amazing day. Unfortunately, tickets are sold out now. We may need one or more volunteers, depending on if we have any dropouts, but otherwise everything's pretty settled.
yep. So hopefully y'all can make it. Hopefully you got tickets. If not, just show up.
I'm going to come over into the camera.
Oh yeah, we're live streaming. So.
Yeah. I do want to thank you all for coming out. We got some new faces. That's awesome. This is a group that we've been growing for the last, 6 months or so, and we're looking to grow it further. So tell your friends. I do want to give a shout out to Big Nerd Ranch. Big Nerd Ranch has been hosting these events, and so I do want to thank them for that. As a part of our kind of arrangement, we say, yeah, you have time to like shill up at the front, but be cool about it. Big Nerd Ranch today is shilling their November Advanced Android course. So if you're an Android developer who wants to become more advanced, let me tell you, it's a good way to do it. So if you are interested in that, come talk to me. I guess I'm the only one from Big Nerd Ranch here.
Yeah.
If you are interested in hosting Atlanta Android Club at your company, your venue, you want to get the word out, let us know. We're looking to reach as many people as we can.
Yep.
So this week, Vishnu here, one of the organizers of Atlanta Android Club, is going to talk to you about remote work.
Yep.
He's pretty well vetted in that.
I've done it for a while.
Yeah.
But I do want to make one more point, is that since we do have new folks, if you are looking at getting experience in giving talks or just writing talks, anything related to speaking and sharing knowledge with other folks in the community, that's kind of the basis of this whole idea here that we've got going. So we've got a Slack, reach out to us. You can probably DM us at Twitter or whatever. We'd love to get you up behind the podium, give you some experience, sharing some whatever experiences you have to share with everyone else. This is only my second time doing this, so it's how I get practice, and it's pretty great for other folks to get practice too. So let us know.
Yeah, cool.
Otherwise,
Take it away.
let's move it on. All right, so I'm Vishnu. Talk is about working remote. The subtitle here is of course a joke, but also something that I've realized over the last few years of working remote is that I feel quite charged up at the end of the day, and this sounds like super synergy. But it's actually, what I found for me was that at the end of the day, I had a lot more energy to hang out with my family, my friends, do stuff around the house, stuff like that. And so this will sort of show you the tips and tricks that I've realized, and also my history, and sort of try and describe my last few years working remote. So yeah, let's start off with some history. So I started off working on site. I lived in Chicago, so I had to deal with some great weather, and I commuted daily, took the bus down Lakeshore Drive, which means the wind is really fun. And so I biked, I took the bus, took some Uber sometimes when I was late, because I'm always late. But then also at the same time, I was really on site. I commuted to client offices. So once per month, I'd fly to St. Louis. I think we flew to New York twice, some other few places. And, you know, I really had to like put on my consultant face and show up at work. And I found that for me, that was very draining. I'd get home, and home in that case was a hotel, the Westin, near where the Cardinals played. Good old home. And so like that would drain me, and I would feel kind of tired, and I'd get home to Chicago at the time, and I just wouldn't want to hang out with folks. And for me, that was like a mental thing. Being in the office also felt draining. And so I started working from home as an attempt to like sort of get centered, like not have the distractions of other folks and like sort of the social overhead of working and then having to talk to someone that comes up by you and not have to, rather wanting to, and then sort of losing that energy bit by bit. Also, Chicago winters, have I mentioned, are awful. I think my first year there, it was negative 46 degrees because that was a polar vortex. And if you're wondering what that feels like, it's where you can't really breathe because it hurts. So why live where it hurts? So I started doing partial remote. At the time, my now wife and I were dating for a while, so she was in school here at Emory Law. I'd fly back to Atlanta about once a month on the off weeks that I wasn't in St. Louis or in Chicago. Do it for a week at a time. I'd work remote, but I'm putting here partial remote. I was still based in Chicago, and so my team was based in Chicago, and so I was the guy on the phone, and that was not very fun. A lot of times you're like, who's eating chips? Or why are you laughing? Please share. And it's you feel very disconnected, and I know a lot of folks have had that experience when working remote, and it sort of turns them off. They're like, I don't want to be the voice on the phone, or I want to know what the jokes are. And so around that time is when I realized that I do enjoy working remote, but I don't really enjoy working remote for a company that is on-site first. And for many companies, lots of companies and stuff, that's how it works, that's how they work, and it works for them. I've got a buddy who works at Pivotal. For them, it's like on-site, face-to-face. They do pair programming, and that works, and their people love it. So this isn't a way to like disparage on-site working. This is just if you're interested in remote, this is what it feels like. And then now, where I'm full-time remote, I've been full-time remote about 3 years. Started in Chicago for a few months and moved back to Atlanta. Worked remote from my parents' basement while looking for a house. And then now I have my own house here in Atlanta, and me and my wife live there, but I work from the house, and she works on-site at her office. So I've got the whole house to myself, but we'll talk about this later, about how you can sort of segment your life from being home and work inside your own home. So yeah, that's my work history. So working remote, like what is that? And these aren't going to be absolutes or anything. This is what I feel is a definition of working remote, and rather, what isn't working remote. And so working from the couch, it's great. I've done it. I did it last week. But if that's how you work remote, you're not really working remote. You haven't really disconnected from your life, from your couch even, to like put your mind and your mental context into your job or whatever task you're doing for work that day. This keeps going, like your dining table. Like that's where you eat food. That's where you eat dinner. That's where you put your mail. I've worked from there, but at the end of the day, it's like maybe 7 p.m. You're like, wait, I'm still working from here? I'm surrounded by all this mail. My wife just walked in. Okay. So, and it gets worse. There's working from bed. This is failure in disguise. And the disguise is really bad because you're in bed. And you like pull over your laptop, you're like, I'll just work from here. It's fine. It's not fine because your brain has never woken up. Your body's literally horizontal. You need to make like a disconnect from whatever you've done in that morning or during the day and when you've entered work. So it's no different contextually as from working on site. You take a commute, you walk in through a door, you're in your office. And so that's why I like to say like working from home is also not working remote, because you're working from your home. Home is a location, but it's also a mental context. If you have your desk in your bedroom, or if you have your desk in your living room, you're working in your living room. You're not working in your office. And so this sort of puts some prerequisites that you do have a dedicated space. And also working remote doesn't require a home. We've got buddies that are like nomads. I've got one of our teammates, our designer, He works half year in Jacksonville, Florida, where his family is, and another half year in Tokyo, where his other family is. And so for him, he still works remote. He still gets his job done. But he's not necessarily at home each time. And so he still makes that mental disconnect when he leaves his real life and then comes into his work life. So then, what is remote? So like I said, it's working from a dedicated space. Wherever you are, you have this dedicated space. Co-working, a dedicated office, just something. And that doesn't mean that you do this every day. I work from coffee shops. I came here and I worked for a bit on some slides, You still need to have this mental dedication towards that context. And so if you're working in a coffee shop, you've got your work laptop, you're not doing it on your personal laptop, you're still trying to do your best as disconnecting from your life. And so creating a daily work experience, this once again isn't necessarily the location, but the experience. You wake up, you sign on at the same time, or you try to, you take a lunch break, you finish off at the right time. You have this daily experience that is in your mind. It's okay, I'm working, and then when it's done, I'm not working, I'm at home. I can cook, I can do the lawn, whatever it is. And quiet. Now this comes with, I should have put these in quotations. It's quiet enough that you can take meetings. When you're on calls, you don't want to have, a coffee shop behind you every day. I've had to do this. I did this when I was doing my wedding planning. I was traveling a lot through Atlanta. I would jump into tea shops or coffee shops, take a meeting, and immediately felt bad because everyone on call with you, upwards of, maybe 10 to 15 people, are hearing the noises around you. You've got your headphones on, so you're kind of disconnected, but they aren't. And at home, when you're working, it doesn't need to be quiet. I'm usually probably blasting either heavy metal or hip hop. Enough so that, if my wife comes home from lunch, she's like, what is happening in there? And it's oh, sorry. Because that's how I get into context. Because if I'm in the office, my headphones are usually playing the same thing. But it gets hot, so at home, I just use speakers. So the quiet thing is that it can be quiet. You want it to be inclusive towards your coworkers. And then also, it's not for everyone. We've had folks that I've talked to that are I've worked remote. I've done it in a really good experience and in a really good setup with the company, and they need to be able to talk to folks around them. They need to have that physical disconnect where they go to an office. And so, yeah, it isn't for everyone, but giving it a chance, you can find out if it is for you. So let's talk about some of the benefits of it, though. And these are benefits that I find in my life and probably over the last 3 years, how I've sort of built my life around working remote. So some folks might disagree with these, but that's my talk. Productivity, right? This comes up all the time. I'm so productive when I work from home. I love working from home. I get so much done. And it's okay, but why weren't you getting it done at work? There's always some reason that you're more productive from home. Folks are always it makes me feel productive. I'm at home, I'm disconnected, there's no one bothering me. But it's you could do that in an office. Maybe your office setup could be improved. Open offices tend to distract. It makes you feel unproductive. But also, for some folks, that makes them feel productive. I was talking to our director of partnerships at Trello. So he's the guy that needs to talk. That's his job. His job is to talk to folks and to listen to folks and to make sure that he's able to jump into conversations where it matters. And so I talked to him when I was at HQ this past week. Was that a month ago, I guess. We just started talking. He's yeah, I worked from home for about a month. I was in, he's based out of New York, and he was out in the suburbs for a month, and he started working remote. He's I just felt disconnected. My job requires me to talk to folks. When I hear a conversation from sales, I'm thinking about, okay, are they a partner? Are they not a partner? Could they be a partner? So that's his job. And for him, productivity is creating these connections with partners. And so when you're remote, that's way harder. You don't get the bleed of an office or of a pod of folks working together, where it's very real time. And so for him, it wasn't productive. So once again, this is how I feel productive. Is when I'm at home, I do feel productive. Because for me, I do like being in my own box, which in my house is a small little office, and I have control of my situation. On top of that, development is an inherently creative output. A lot of folks put it as an engineering, and it is engineering, But if you look at it creatively, you have this problem in your head, you have this idea, this solution that you need to get out of your head onto not paper, but into code. And so creativity, like, it burns in the back of your head. You're like, gosh, damn it, I know how to fix this. Or like, here's the fix, and it's going to take 8 hours or whatever. And so it just burns there, it sits there, and you're like, it's a thing you have to do. And so when you get the chance to do this, it takes time to get this output out. And so, you need that time, and you need sort of unbroken time, and you need a comfortable environment. So for a lot of folks that I've talked to that enjoy working remote, their comfortable environment is being at home. But they just sort of tweak it a bit, and then they think about it differently. And so when you have this creative output, it always ties into deliverables from the company, right? To them, they're like, okay, we need to get this login flow set up, whatever it is. But to you, you're like, okay, but I want to build it. I'm going to build it with this API. I'm going to build it with this architecture, and it's going to be great, and people are going to love it. And it might not be actual tickets or anything. It might just say like login flow. But to you, you should try and you think about it as something that needs to be delivered. Like, this is your product. They've told you to make this, but you are thinking like, okay, I'm going to make this. I'm going to make it great. I'm going to give it to someone, and they're going to use it. And in this context, Android, they're like literally touching what you're making. You're like, they're going to love this. And so that's your deliverable in this case. And so a lot of our job as developers and engineers is built on the idea of deliverables. And so when I'm at home working, these deliverables help because I can sort of count in my head like, oh, I've actually done like 3 or 4 things. I've delivered 2 or 3 things today. And so that, to me, is productive, right? It's not like I didn't finish the whole thing, but I've finished 2 to 3 parts of this. And so the idea of like segmenting your deliverables into like tasks and stuff, and then actually being pretty good about tracking that and being like, oh, I did finish this. So you get that feeling of success when like 5 o'clock rolls around. You're like, yeah, I'm totally fine signing off and then going back to real life. And so yeah, that's things that are for productivity. And then all of this ties up with distraction is a huge burn. It's more than just the 10 seconds that of you getting distracted, because creative output requires context, and building context takes time. The moment that context is broken, you are now sitting there like, okay, I gotta look at these activities and this fragment, and I gotta go talk to this navigation control. So you have to rebuild this context, and you've got this huge decay of effort, and it takes a lot of time to sort of recoup that decay, upwards of maybe 1 to 2 hours if like something that unplanned occurs. So when I'm working remote, the way that I sort of counter this is by keeping track of my calendar, making sure that I'm well aware of things that could pop up that could pull me out of the context. So like, for example, my whole team is distributed, and we do weekly stand-ups. And for specific reason of like keeping meetings together, we do our weekly stand-up at 11 Eastern, because folks go to lunch at 12 Eastern. And so we're going to break context at 12. So why not have stand up early? It's like 11:30, 11. And then so it's just like an hour and a half of broken context rather than like causing the decay. So if we did it at 9 in the morning, 9 to 10, then 10 o'clock, you're like, okay, I'm about to eat lunch in 2 hours. I guess I'll look at Jira or look at Trello. Instead, we get like 3 hours of time from like 8 or 9 to 12. And then you get meeting and lunch. And then you get back and you've got 4 hours of work. And so that feeling of productivity isn't affected by the distraction. So it's really great. Another benefit is flexibility, and this comes up so often, like the idea that your commute is gone. You've got so much time. So, and that you've got flexible hours, like you wake up at 8 and you need to go do something and you get back at 9:30, you are allowed to sign on at 9:30, 10 o'clock, 11, as long as you let your team know. So this flexibility works for you, but you have to work in the confines of a team. Most of us do, at least. And so like going back to like, I recently got married, and so we had a whole bunch of wedding planning, which required getting out to like the venue, to the caterer. And so this let me ahead of time plan out like, all right, team, I'm going to be missing from like 2 to 4 because I'm meeting with the venue, but I'll be back on, and extending to 6:30 for the day. So just planning out and then letting people know that I'll be in and out, but also being able to get my work done, get my meetings in, make sure that I'm not hindering the team. And on top of that, I didn't have to deal with like a commute, which is pretty great. But again, timing comes with this idea that like, okay, now I'm super flexible, but I can't get any work done because I'm always doing something else. And so it teaches you discipline. I'm very undisciplined in normal life. And so like when I first started working remote, I'd like literally roll out of bed, walk into my living room and work from there because I was in Chicago. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. And so that discipline never kicked in. I'd just be like, okay, I'm going to go sit on the couch. I'm going to order some food. And then, so like without discipline, you just don't fall into a routine. And once you get a routine, you don't keep up with the routine. So you do start learning about that kind of stuff, which was pretty exciting because I was a very lazy, not useful person before. But then again, like this kind of flexibility, you know, it's a double-edged sword. And that's where the discipline comes up. So you don't want to be overly flexible. Rigidity is useful. And then your flexibility affects your perception of how your tasks work out for the whole day. You think about like, okay, 5 o'clock, I'm done. I'm going to go do something. So you think about like, okay, these are the tasks I can put in. And this comes with like as a, as a side effect of discipline. You start thinking about things with a better mindset. So your life tasks, you're like, okay, I have time now to do these things. I'm going to think about what I need to do. But your work tasks, you're like, okay, I only have this much time before I have to do my life tasks. So I'm going to do my work tasks. But this also comes with another issue where like your friends and your family, like, oh, he works from home. He's fine. He can come hang out. And you're like, so you have to work on others' perception of yourself as well. You are still working. Your hours might be 11 to 7. That's fine. But you have to let other folks in your life know that until 7 o'clock, you're still at the office. And it's pretty easy to be like, hey, you want to jump on Overwatch or like whatever game you want to play? And it's like, no, man, I got to finish work. Sorry. And so like you have to sort of control others' perception of you and how flexible you are. And so that leads pretty well into life balance. Right? So how do you get life balance when your whole life is in your home? You get free time, first of all. So you get this like, my commute in Chicago was about 45 minutes each way. I'd read a book, but that's about it because I'm on a bus like this with an e-reader. You have a lot of time now. So like I'd wake up. So now my routine, I wake up, I do some yoga, I make some coffee, watch some random YouTube video. 9 o'clock rolls around, I sign on. 5 o'clock rolls on, and I like do something around the home. I'll like work on my car, just something, and it like helps you get time to have hobbies. Because another thing, like with the distraction burn, a commute also burns energy out of you. No matter how you're commuting, you get home, you're just like, this couch is great, and then you just like fall. With no commute, your burn is decreased a lot, and so for me, this is where I'm coming up with. I feel recharged. I'm out of work and I'm like, okay, I finished a lot of stuff. Let's go finish some more stuff. And I'll like do things during the day or like in the evening and stuff. I'll cook dinner. I'll work on slides, stuff like that. So it comes in handy for me. People always wonder then, you know, you've got all this free time, but how do you get this clean cut from work? 5 o'clock rolls down. How do you be like, all right, I'm done, but I'm in my house. How do you clean cut? So like I said, when you come into an office and you come out of an office, you're going through doors, you're sort of making a location change. We were talking to someone last month here about he walks out of his house and then around into his office, and then when he leaves, he walks out of it and he walks back around. My teammate Joe, he lives in Minnesota. He's building an office out back behind his house because his wife works from home, he's got a child, and so making the disconnect is real tough. So they're going to start like daycaring their kid, I think, and then he's got his office in the back. He's actually off for the next 2 weeks building this office because he lives in Minnesota and you build offices there, I think. I guess. I don't know. But this ties back into having that dedicated context, that dedicated space. It lets you sort of leave that space behind. So my office at home, I don't go into after I'm done for the day because it's not like during the day if I worked on site, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go back to the office real quick. So same situation happens at home. It's behind my living room. It's like a door that my brain has now realized doesn't exist after 5. It just kind of happens as you set up this discipline. And when you go in there, you're like, I don't want to be here. And you walk right back out pretty much. Yeah.
What about your computer?
Exactly. So clean cut from work has a lot of points. Computers, we love them. I program on the side. This is my personal computer. I have a work computer, and I have a gaming desk. So I play like PC games. I have a separate room. So my wife's got her desk. She's a lawyer. She's got papers. I've got 2 monitors and a gaming computer. It's a separate room, and it's not easy to set that up. It's not cheap, but if you're like reusing your computer, what's stopping you from being like, I'm gonna check work chat, or I'm gonna open up my work project because I just suddenly had this idea. It's
profiles. I didn't share work.
yeah, so you have to find a way to like disconnect, right? But for me, it's like I'm so into how I've got my profile set up. It's like if I have to recreate this, it's gonna be painful, and so I won't do it. So for me, it's easier to have 2 computers, 2 machines, because I am like very easy to tantalize in getting back into work. I used to be in the office until like 8 p.m. when I was on site, just like working because that's how I was. So at 5 o'clock when I leave it, that computer stays in the back. I don't go back onto it. I don't take it out of there. That's how I control it. Other folks it might be easier. Some other folks it might be even harder. They'll find another way to do it, like separate office, all right, separate office building. And then energy, life balance. Like I said, feeling charged. I found very easily after being on site for so long that I hate hanging out after work. People would be like, hey, you want to grab a beer? I was like, no, I don't. I'm going to sit on my couch and I'm going to watch Breaking Bad because that was the show at the time. But now it's like at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm like yearning for like social interaction. So I'll text my buddies and they'll be like, no, I just got back from work. And it's like, damn, you're feeling like I felt. But I have that energy now, so like I'll jump onto Overwatch or jump onto like Monster Hunter, which is what I'm playing now. Buddies in Chicago that are also remote will jump on and we'll all just hang out for like 3 hours there, go get a beer here, whatever it is. I do tend to feel a lot better at the end of the day when I have got control over my social day at work. But like I said, it's not for everyone. It's not like my wife loves going to the office. She worked from home for a week and was like, how do you do this? I hate it. I want people. And so, that's how she works. But it's not all like, whatever the saying is, it's not all great. There are a lot of negatives. But the negatives might not be like a individual situation. It can also be part of your company and how your company works. So for personal stuff, this doesn't come up often, but loneliness. People ask questions like, how do you stay, connected? So loneliness is real. It's like mental health is very important when you're working from home or working remote. Social interaction is very important to folks. And so loneliness, how we try to offset this feeling of loneliness is to feel connected to your coworkers. That's what you get when you're on site, is you get connections with coworkers. This is part of company culture also. It's a bigger initiative in some sense. So for example, we'll do like ad hoc hangouts. Like we'll just jump on and be like, hey, does anybody want to chat for a bit? Just like shoot the shit. Throw up a video chat link and people will just join. We'll talk about mattresses a lot for some reason. Like we've connected on mattresses as a team. But like it doesn't matter. That's what teams do, right? And so you try and build those connections remotely. So every week at the end of the week we do what's called Bash. So it started in New York, which is where HQ is for us, and then the remotes were like, hey, we should Bash too. And so we'll throw up a video link, and then everyone will just jump on at like 3:30 Eastern, 4 o'clock Eastern, and be like, hey, how's it going? Like upwards of 20 people getting on video chat, and just if you want to have a beer. You just talk about what we're gonna do that weekend or what you've done this week. Try and keep it so it's like a social connection. So you are making those connections with your coworkers. You might not be like best friends, but you know them as a person, and you understand them as a person then. And so this is a slow burn. It's like once per week and stuff, but as it happens, you start feeling more and more connected. And then chat is very important. So Slack, HipChat, whatever it is you're using. Good etiquette in chat is important on making sure that folks feel included in the chat rooms, but also like not excluding folks by using @here or @all. When you use @all across time zones, you wake someone up at 6 in the morning, or you ping them at 9 p.m. and you get a ping, you're like, damn it, I don't want to think about that right now. And so like being thoughtful about time zones, being thoughtful about the life balance other folks might have is very important. And it lets you feel connected though. Like you sign on, you're like, okay, there's gonna be people here that respond when I message, or like we our support team, for example, when they sign on from Germany all the way to Sydney. No matter when they sign on, they say, hey, into the support room. And if someone's online, they'll just say hey back and just talk. And it's just like, it's that feeling of walking into an office, but you just signed on. And that helps. Just a small little hi, it turns out it helps a lot. Cabin fever, I think that's the term, is for feeling like you're stuck in a cabin or something. How do you feel connected with the outside world if you're in your home the whole time? Like I mentioned, you sort of learn to use your time for other things. Like I said, I work on a car, so that gets me outside, literally under a car. And I bike, so that gets me outside there. I try and take part in like volunteer opportunities in my little neighborhood or with other things that let me meet other people, get me out of the house. Stuff like that's really important. My wife is very big on getting out of the house. She hates being in the house, and so that for me is a big momentum, because otherwise I'm just going to be sitting there playing Monster Hunter for hours, which I did last weekend because I was traveling for 3 weeks before that, and I needed to like sit there and do that. But finding some motivation, finding something that will get you out of the house is very important, and it helps you like stay sane, because you'll start hating your house and you'll hate your couch and you'll hate like this TV sucks and it's like why am I here? So it's important to do this stuff. And that ties in really well with this, which is the negatives are your physical health will reduce the first few times. Like if you're just starting out remote, you'll realize, I think we just talked about this earlier, if you wear a step tracker, it's like 700 steps. Like what the hell? I didn't go anywhere. It's like, yeah, you went from your office to your kitchen to your restroom and back. It's like you've covered about 20 square feet. You've gone nowhere. And so you have to find a way to like get your health going, whether it's exercise. It doesn't need to be, it can be anything. So some folks are talking about like they take their dog on a walk. That gets them outside, cabin fever. Gets them loneliness. Nah, they got a dog. You're not lonely with a dog. And it gets you moving, which is very important, because otherwise you're just sitting in your home and you will start to feel very unhealthy. So for me, it's a matter of waking up an extra 30 minutes early and doing some yoga and like sweating a little bit before work starts. I know some of my teammates, they do morning bike rides. In the winter, I'll do like after work workouts, because it's too cold in the morning to wake up and just start lifting weights, because that's nonsense. So like 5 p.m. rolls around, I'll start, going to the weight room or whatever. Just, again, tying back to discipline, just trying to be legit about that, but also not hating yourself if you missed a day. Like I didn't wake up this morning and did it. I didn't do that, and I didn't feel good about it, but that happens. So you can't really knock yourself too hard. And so yeah, and there's also professional negatives here. So internships, they're very tough to do remote. So tough that I don't believe we do any remote internships, because internships have a very key factor to them, and that is sort of integrating into business culture. If you're an intern, your history in this field is very low, whatever this field might be. So you sort of require the social aspects of an office, of the work experience. You also require immediate support from your teammates. Like when you're remote, immediate support is a very hard thing to do. A lot of your communications are asynchronous, and your sort of workflow is built around that asynchronous communication. But if you're an intern, you not only don't have the experience in history on knowing when to raise a problem, and then when you do, it's usually awful, because it's like, I kind of broke everything. And it's like, no one actually cares because you're an intern. It's like, that's your job. You're supposed to learn by mistakes. But if your mentor is like Eastern time and your Pacific time or whatever, and you're not getting response, you're just sitting there sort of brewing, like, oh God, he hates me. What have I done? And so like that kind of stuff, like that like loop that they can go on, it's very tough for interns, and so it doesn't work really well remotely. Like I said, they do think that business experience of being with other folks. When you're in HQ, for us, like in New York, you're around sales, you're around support, you're around the C levels. And so you get to sort of see these like movements of the company. Just pretty useful. It sort of lets you understand how a modern company works. So yeah, and then team velocity. So this is something that doesn't get talked about. People think they're, as an individual, they're productive, but your team as a whole might not be like as quick. Like if you take like a small slice of time, but over time you learn to communicate asynchronously in a way that works for everyone. So like for example, we need to make a decision on a release tomorrow, but we're not going to talk about it till tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it on our own time. So it's like I'll get on Eastern time. I'll be like, here's my thoughts, and we'll wait for a bit. The folks in Central Time will get on, they'll give their thoughts. Folks in Pacific Time will get on, they'll get their thoughts. And then towards the end of the day, we'll have a decision that can be made. If you're on site, everyone on site, you can make that decision pretty early on with a quick meeting at like 9 a.m. And so the company has to be ready to handle these kind of situations. They can't expect, unless you're like on call, they can't really expect you to jump on at like 6 in the morning to make a decision on a release. And in our case, that'll go to the Play Store and then sit around for 3 hours and then get released. And so asynchronous communications and asynchronous decision-making becomes very important to remote working, but it can reduce your overall like velocity. And this isn't velocity in like agile terms. This is literally how quickly you get things done. And so, but we're well-versed in how we work, and so we don't really put stock in how quickly we're working, rather how like well we're working. But every company's different there. And like I mentioned earlier, team socializing. This ties in with the loneliness. You're more than just a dev team. You're a team. I've been on my team for 2.5 years now. These are folks that I've known for a good portion of my professional life. We are working together to build a product. This one is our product. If it's a consulting, it's someone else's product, but you still have investment in this thing, and you're not just robots. You want to know each other on a personal level, understand each other at least. And this is more than just your team, though, because your team is, maybe 10 people. Your company might be 100, 1,000, but so for us with the weekly bash, it's people from all over. So we've got server jump in, support jumps in. I like meeting these people. Otherwise, they're just like this person in Sydney. It's really great to meet these folks. You sort of understand how your company works, and you get a better feeling of empathy for those around you in the company, and it helps your like professional interactions are definitely helped by this, because otherwise you're just a face on the screen behind like text. But when you're actually talking with voice, you sort of connect on a human level, and that's really important in just understanding each other. So it's a negative, but then if you do it right, it's a really big positive, because you're all in this sort of remote situation. So yeah, those are, in my opinion, some of the negatives. But let's get back to some positives, which are some tips from me, some realizations over the last few years of doing this. Assume positive intent. This sort of ties back with socializing everything. When you're talking in text, there's no emotions behind that. It could be sarcasm, it could be angry, it could be humorous, whatever. Assuming positive intent is super important. We come from different backgrounds on our team. Got folks in Texas, got folks from Australia, we got folks in Germany. We don't know when they say something, you read it through your filter, but your filter doesn't apply to them. And so it's important to assume that they are also working through their positive filter, so you don't get like, how could you say that? No, it's like, yeah, he said that because he meant it, like because he really thinks that this is important and positive. So assume positive intent. In case of confusion, communicate. Communication is very important. Communication builds teams. If text isn't good enough, jump on video call almost immediately. The longer you take to jump onto video call, the longer confusion lasts. The more of your team you sort of pull into this confusion bubble, and it sort of just like deteriorates. So jump in. So like, for example, if we're running into a problem at work, if it's code problem or anything, if it takes more than like a few seconds to sort of get the point across, we're like, all right, here's a link. Just jump onto video chat. Let's talk it out. And then anyone else is able to join in, discuss, get it all like hammered out, and then you sort of capture that somewhere. For us, it's Trello, and then it's done. So that's pretty great. Communication, like I said, important. The chat room becomes the office. This is how you connect with your coworkers. On site, you come in, you say hey, you shake hands, you grab a coffee together. Off site, You jump in, you say hey, you grab coffee, you're just in your own kitchen. Like I said, be careful with etiquette. You want to minimize notifications across time zones. You don't know what folks are doing. For example, my teammate just had a kid. His time is totally whack. I have no idea what he's doing. He could be like dealing with a baby. I don't want to ping him and be like, hey, I'm changing the string. Like, that doesn't help anyone. So like, just post it. It'll get done if it's not important. If it's really important, which, you might have a high severity case, it's fine. Like, those are high severity, but you sort of learn to understand severities in the, like, when you're doing asynchronous communications. And on top of that, you want to make sure your teammates know if you're unavailable. Updating your calendar, updating your status on chat becomes very useful. Something I never really did before this was like set myself away, or like set a calendar event on my calendar, being like, I'm out at a doctor's appointment, or I'm out at the wedding venue. And then that lets them know that if they're trying to schedule a meeting, I'm not there. Or if they're wondering, like, why am I not responding, they can check my calendar and be like, oh, he's not there. And that lets that churn, it stops that churn right from the beginning. Super important. As I mentioned at the very beginning with the deliverables, segment your work. This lets you understand that you've completed work, and it also lets you understand what work is left. So around 5 o'clock, when you're thinking about signing off, you're like, oh, okay, I had this huge task, but I've done these little things. Tomorrow, I'm fine, I can do these things. You can get that clean cut, and so 5 o'clock itself isn't like an exact time, plus or minus 30, 45 minutes, of course. But as you feel like you're sort of petering out for the day, you can feel happy that you've completed what you set out to do. And then you go on with your real life without having to have your brain just churning against like this mega task, which I'm pretty sure happens to a lot of folks. Exercise, I'm gonna say it again. It's crazy important. I didn't realize it. I was a super bum. I like it. I like exercising now. You have free time, put it towards your health. This isn't just physical exercise, mental exercise, whatever it takes. This also lets you sort of understand how you work and how you live when you have this time to sort of understand this stuff. So it's super important. That ties in really well to get outside. The outside is great, it turns out. There's trees, unless it's April and there's pollen, then stay inside. But the outside's pretty great. You can sort of reconnect with your neighborhood. You can reconnect with your city or with the folks around you. So I think that for me is like the real big thing that sort of got me back into Atlanta, connecting with my neighborhood, my friends that live around me. Otherwise, I would very much be a hermit. So, yeah. Here's some links that I sort of referenced against this talk. So there's Trello blog. We talk about remote work a lot on our blog. It's very important to us. 70% of our team is distributed, like I said, from Germany down to Sydney. Guy that goes to Japan every now and then. It's really important to us. We talk about it. We talk about productivity. We talk about mental health. We talk about team interactions, all that stuff. This Doist article came out, I think, like yesterday or 2 days ago. He really talks about the negatives of remote work, and he like does shine a light against that. And it's very important to understand that it's not all great. There are a lot of negatives that you can sort of support with how you handle it. So it's a very good article on that. And then if you're looking for remote jobs, specifically these are, we work remotely. This is any remote job, and then androidjobs.io does have a filter for remote, for Android jobs. Take a whack at it. It's pretty fun. I like working remote. Yeah, that's it. And then questions, if you have any. Unless I was really good at talking.
You mentioned sort of 9 to 5.
Yep.
I guess not everyone here, not everyone is in a kind of supportive work environment, in which that is always the case.
Yep.
Some weeks are heavier than others. Have you found like you kind of have to be locked into that time scale?
Not necessarily. So I would say maybe 85 to 90% of my work life, fits into that time scale because I've had the experience to set it up that way. But like we have release weeks, we have high severity issue weeks, we have deadlines of our public company, we have like legal things that we have to complete. And so in those weeks we do run longer. And like I said, this is a very company culture type thing. Understanding that these long weeks aren't beneficial in the long term. A long week takes away from like the next 2 weeks probably, just mentally on all your team. I mentioned this earlier here that I do take like mental health days where like, okay, I'm burned. I'm just gonna sit and play video games on like a Tuesday. Or like we'll have teammates that be like, I'm just not feeling up to it today, guys. I'm gonna sign off. I'll be back on tomorrow. And the team is very supportive, not just like the Android team, but the whole company is supportive about that. So it's very important towards working remotely that your company supports the full spectrum of what it takes to work remotely. It's not as easy as being like, I'm gonna just work from my office. The whole support structure does help a lot, and it helps you feel like part of the company. So like, it's not just you that's doing a long week, it's usually your team. Like around a release push, you're not alone. Because if you're at home and you're doing a long week alone by yourself at like 7 p.m., that sucks. I've done it before. It's not fun, and so like that sort of screws you as an individual. So it's sort of like a team and company situation for solving that.
Aside from Slack, are there any other tools that you use that are really helpful?
Yeah, so there's gonna be what we use. We use Trello. Work at Trello. We use Trello. One thing that does do for us as a company, as a product, 70% of us are remote. Our product is built with that in mind because that's how we work. So it is a very good tool for that also. We use Zoom, which is video chat. There's a reason we use Zoom and we don't use other VCs. Zoom supports up to like 150 people at once. We do our town halls remotely. Our team sort of mantra is if one person's remote, everyone's remote. So if you have 5 people in New York and 1 guy in Minnesota, everyone is remote. We all jump onto a Zoom together. It levels the playing field when you do that because you're not like, hey, did he just say that? No, it's like you have to unmute and be like, hey, did he just say that? And so everyone, it's like very open, it's transparent. Chat, we use Stride, which is the Atlassian product. We just partner with Slack, so Slack is great. Love Slack. Whatever chat program you use, set up etiquette rules. For example, for us, Atlassian is a very large company, 2,500, 2,600 people. Trello is a very small product, 160 people, I think, maybe less. And so when Atlassian folks, like the greater Atlassian, they come into our rooms, we have like our topic set to be like, careful using that here. And then like I built a bot that like, if you use that here in a room that's protected, it's like our announcements room, it'll like ping you and be like, hey, this room is protected against at all. Please don't use that in here because it'll ping 160 people across like half the world. So whatever chat program you do end up using, just be like very good about that. We've used Mural for collaborative decision making, which is just like this sort of online whiteboard, I think. I don't really know how to explain it. So like, for example, we just did a tech debt prioritization exercise where we have like, okay, this code base is 7 years old. We have a lot of tech debt. Let's prioritize it. Let's get it like set up into a pipeline. And so what we did is we had this list of Post-its on the left and a graph. And everyone just went in and they sort of dragged Post-its to where they felt it goes. So it's like what you do on a whiteboard in an office. So Mural really helped with that. Losing my voice. As for other tools, I don't know. We've used Jukebox. I think that's a thing. We do like testing blitzes, and we'll all jump on and like share playlists while we're doing this like QA blitz, just so that we can have like music playing during the QA blitz. But I can't think of much else. Yeah.
There is one more point here from Microsoft. They made it free recently. You use that both for text chat and video.
Oh, Microsoft Teams?
Yes.
Yeah. So Microsoft Teams, Slack, Side, HipChat, Hangouts, Meet. They all solve the same sort of base problem. The reason that we do Zoom is because you can, this is really important, I forgot to mention this, you can do the Brady Bunch view, which allows you to put upwards of like 20 people or 25 people on screen at once, versus speaker view, where you're like constantly switching context on who's talking. Brady Bunch view lets you get sort of an overview of what everyone's doing. So it's like if someone raises their hand, you can see it. You can see how their faces react to like whatever. Like if they're like, I'll like do thumbs up real big, and so folks can see it. That has become like crazy important for us, that Brady Bunch view. So much so that if we were to think about moving, that'd be like, does it have Brady Bunch? No, doesn't matter. You could have like 18,000 different other features and be like, we need that. So.
Y'all do any in-person team events to help break up?
Yes. So Trello does Trello Together, which is a company, like a team-wide offsite. So we try and send everyone to one place. Then we also do smaller team offsites. We're having a mobile offsite in October in New York, which is at HQ. Personal contact is important. Video chat is about as close as you can get without actually meeting someone in person. It's the reason we run these meetups, right? Like you want to meet folks in person. That's how you really sort of meet someone. And so that's very critical to us. So we try and do offsites.
So interviews, do you guys Brady Bunch view interviews, or do you?
So yeah, interviews are great.
In person?
So I was remote interviewed. I have done remote interviews now. So we do one-on-one, and a junior will shadow if they need to. And they'll be video off because that scares an interviewer. The moment you have to confront two people on video chat, it's not twice as hard. It's like 4 times as hard because you're like, who do I talk to? Who cares? And you're like trying to like watch their faces to see if we did the right thing. So we do one-on-one. It's via Zoom. And our interviews, we do code share, like screen share. So it's paired programming. And so the one-on-one thing is really important. It lets your interviewee feel more comfortable that they're only talking to one person.
We have a question from the chat here.
Whoa. Internet question.
Cyber questions. Any tips for getting over burnout? Take a vacation?
Yes. Burnout is real, no matter if you're on-site, off-site. This is something I've been like really cognizant of this year because I have had a very stressful year professionally and personally. Not bad stress. Stress is not a bad thing, but it has been a lot of stuff. Like I said, I take what I've started calling mental health days. It's like not often, maybe once a quarter, maybe once a half year, but it's like you feel that burn. You're like, if I just get on today, I'm not going to do anything. You know, it's like if you're looking at a candle, it's like the last little bit of the wick is left in your brain. It's not useful. You're just, if you burn it out, you're just gone for the next week. Take a day. Like, just do it. I don't know how else to put it because like it's very hard when you have investment in a product. You're like, I feel guilty. You know, my team might need me. Our team is very good about understanding that folks do need to take a day. Team culture is really important behind that. So that's it. Take some vacation.
I just logged into our time tracking software and take a day.
When you're applying to remote roles, what are some good questions to ask the employer,
Sure.
specifically around but they're questioning you about culture, but what are some things you would want to know about culture and working remotely?
Sure. This is probably one of the most important questions you can ask. So that's a good thing that you've done that. Like this specific, like asking about how they handle remote. So you're hiring remote. Is your team remote? And if not, how do they manage remote meetings would be my first question. Because my experience is being the voice on the phone. It's the worst. Because you're literally like, hello, I have a, hey, oh. And like, it's just not great. And so you don't want that. So like, if I'm an interviewee, I'm like asking questions like, how do you handle remote meetings? How do you make decisions? You know, are decisions synchronous? Does it require like a full quorum of people to be like, hey, everyone here, we're doing this, we're making this decision? Or is it something that's a little bit more fluid? Are they able to handle that kind of fluidity? How do their managers, how do their upper levels handle remote? Are they remote? Because when you do one-on-ones, you want to be talking to someone that's comfortable talking to someone remote, because you're very vulnerable during manager one-on-ones. You're trying to sort of air laundry, or you're receiving good or bad feedback. And if they're not handling the remote part of it easily or well, they're just doing the software wrong, they're in a loud place, they're in the middle of an open office, it's really awful. Or it could be. I haven't had that experience, but I can see that being as a real issue. And so having the managers be well aware of what remote means is really important. What else? And then maybe just what software do they use? What you asked me. What software do they use to support their remote teams? If it's just all done in Notepad, you'd have to leave that interview immediately anyways. But sort of, they should start understanding how certain software does work towards remote people. My buddy works at Basecamp. Basecamp, they use Basecamp. They're 100% distributed, so they've got the software stuff down. We work at Trello. We use Trello. That's fine. Not everyone gets that benefit, so those decisions do sort of impart effect on the team. That's about it. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
You can't do that until the live stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Keep it together.